Okay, guys. So, welcome to this next video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about an extensive things about group policy. I think you guys probably wondering what the heck is group policy. Well, here's the thing. So, I came up with this because I've gotten a lot of people who complain that we get a lot of users who are changing settings on computers. I don't want my users going through there and making these types of changes and things like that. Now, of course, it requires Active Directory domain services in order to kind of coincide with group policy. So, you're probably wondering why didn't I make a video yet involving Active Directory. Well, that is essentially, it kind of coincides with group policy. So we'll talk about both of them in this video. So let's get started. So what we're here, we've got a virtual machine running Windows Server 2016. Now, I just want to, we're running it in a virtual machine. However, if you have a regular server machine, you should still see the same exact stuff. Now, I'm here in this special thing. What I did was I went to Start, and I went over here to Administrative Tools, and I just went here to Active Directory Users and Computers. And all I did was just went down here, and it's going to take you over to this lovely, fine little screen here called Active Directory Users and Computers. If you are in this type of environment, or not, you're probably going to see this. You should see it's something similar to Active Directory. If you're in like an enterprise help desk environment or something like that, with Active Directory, this is very, very similar. So what I've done was I've basically made it up, the Barnes IT. What I did was I made a OU, or also known as essentially a organizational unit, which basically tells you what folder, which is a group of users in. And this is basically, it's very useful if let's say you're in an enterprise environment like the WWE, and you have the following departments. You've got finance, you have your music department, you have your budgetary department, you have, let's say, all right, so this is what I have here. So what I did was I basically make an OU just like this. So this is my finance department. I'm going to make a organizational unit. These are just basically folders that you make, and you can kind of sort whichever department you have. So I'm going to go to organizational unit, and I'm just going to type in, we'll call this ITD, or IT department. And you can just just click OK. And now you have you have a folder just like this, ITD, or you have finance. I'm going to make another one. We could call it, these are not necessarily actual users. These are just groups of people within your environment. So whenever you have a little issue, if somebody calls in or something and they have an issue, you can pinpoint which department they're in, and it'll have all of your username and information. So I'm just going to make a third organization unit. We're going to call this, let's call this, I'm trying to think. What department can you possibly think of that typically you always see? Oh, lovely. Human resources. Yes, I call this human resources. Okay, so I got three different departments here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to start with human resources, and I'm just going to use a good example of what I'm talking about with the group policy for just a second. But the first thing we have to do is we got to create users, and we've got to create groups. Let's start making some users. I'm going to make user. I'm going to call this Mike. First name will be Mike. The last name will be Blount. And then these are just nicknames that I've came up with, and I've made up these names. So, and you can make the login name, the logon name. This is what their credentials are going to be used to log onto their machine. Now, I normally use a certain format. I like this format the best. The username would be first name dot last name. So, as you can see, since I have Mike in the first name, and since I have blount as the last name. All I have to do is just your first dot your last name. Um, and this at local, that's the name of the domain that I created when I promoted this as a domain controller. So all we're going to do is we're just going to click next. And then it is going to take you over to password. So obviously what you want to do, and this is what most environments will do, this is the best way to put it. All you really have to do is just click on, let's say, you confirm your password. I've set this to welcome to, and you can set it like welcome to or whatever you want to do. You can set it like a default password, something that's well known or something that's very simple, where you can tell the user, hey, put this password in, and what you can do is you can change the password to whatever the user wants. So that's why I have this checked off as a user must change password and next log on, because that way the user can change the password they'd like. Now, it's and this is something that it can do it. So what I'm going to do now, this basically this option is I just check off password never expires. Basically, what that means is this password is never changed unless the user decides to change it. So you see what I mean? So what I'm going to do is we'll just go here, password never expire. We'll just go here, user must change password and next login, and just click finish, and then click OK. And then now you have basically you have a user. Now, what I'm going to suggest is we'll make multiple users. Let's say I want to use um, Jimmy Smith, and you just make a logon name the same way. But it depends. Again, this really depends on your environment. Some environments have it the first dot your last name. Some of them have a first initial and then a last name. Again, it really depends on your environment, how you want to do things, or if you have what policies your management may have set for how they want to have their logon information. But this is something where you could typically do this. So let's say I have Jimmy.Smith, and I'm going to go to click next. Password, we're going to do this the exact same way. And then click next, and then click finish. And then now you have a second user. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a security group. Okay? Uh, let's say, before we do that, let's say the user is locked out. Let's say they put in their password and it comes up with the account is locked out as a machine. What you could do you could do, let's go to properties, and then go down here to account, and just click on unlock account. And once you click on unlock account, that's it. So now they're back unlocked. Now they can go back and log on to their machine. Now, um, let's say they forgot their password. All you have to do is just right click on the user within Active Directory, like click set a password, and just click on new password and confirm password, whatever that password is, and you can just click OK, and then that's it, and it allows you to put in your passwords. So click cancel. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a security group. A security group is essentially a group that allows you to pinpoint which one, whoever's in this group, this will be set for the group policy. So we'll call this employees HR. Right now, why do you think I made it for this particular department and not every department? Because some departments may have different admin rights or whatever privileges you may want to have. Okay, that's just how it would work. So now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is now we'll just go ahead and just right click, add to this group that I just created. We'll call this employees HR. Just click check names and then click OK. We'll do the same thing with this user. Just right click on add to a group, and then we'll call this employees. And you can do a check name if you want. You don't even have to type in the whole thing if you don't have to. Just to save on time. You know what I mean? So we'll click OK. So now you have these groups. These eyes have been added to our security group. Now we're going to go in here and check out what exactly is in our security group. It's going to be members of the following. And I can just call this, we're going to call this local user. And we'll just click OK. Local user. So whatever that is set to, that's fine. Now, and we'll just call this member of, or better yet, we'll just call this member of users. So I'm actually going to remove that local user because it's kind of redundant. But we'll just go with the users, and I'm going to also go with domain user. Okay? That way, within the domain environment, they can go to any machine and they can log right in. Okay, so we'll click apply and then click OK. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to show you guys something in just a second, because I know this is something everybody's been waiting for. Okay, this is what we call group policy management. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to exit out of it right now, and we're going to bring it right back. So all we have to do is we can just go ahead and minimize that. We'll just go to Start, Administrative Tools, and then go down to until you see Group Policy Management. Now, remember, just to recap, just remember that all of these have to be added, had to be done. These roles had to be added before you can do this. So, once you have that done, all you have to do is we're going to go ahead and just remove that, that little user piece. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just type in users. So anyone who's a user in that group, they cannot change the settings, okay? And then what I'm going to do is now we have users in here, and we've got local user in here too, domain users. So whoever's in here. So, but it depends on what you want to name it. If you're at, say, I'm at the Worcester County Public School System, and you don't want the student going in and making changes, you can just type in as students, as a security group, and then you basically can set it to what they can have access to and what they cannot. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, now that we have users, and again, this is not enforced just yet because we haven't made the specific changes. Now what I did was, I'm going to make a group policy object, and this is in our FARs, which is the domain controller that we made, called orange.it.local, and then we'll go down here, right click on this down here, and then go to create a group policy object at this domain and link it here, and we'll just call this employees HR. Lovely, right? Oh yes. So basically, this is how you just create an object, and say we want to delete that other one because that was a little. So just click OK. And now, while we're down here, I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. Now what we'll do is just go down here to add, and we'll type in, let's say, type in employees HR. Okay? And I'm going to put that in there. We're going to put in domain users. And then we'll just add users to this as well. And then hit OK. Now that we have our security groups in, which is what we define as going to be our security groups, what we'll do, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and this is who this policy will be enforced for these following groups. As you see what this means underneath where this says security filtering. So what I'm now going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and right click and hit edit. And it's going to bring you over to the editor. Now, there's a difference. Now, there's going to be two types of configuration. However, all the settings are pretty much the same. The only difference is that you have two types of configuration. One is computer configuration. So anyone who logs onto that computer that is joined to that domain, those are the changes that happens into that. This is for user configuration. That is specific to the user, which is what I want to do in this case. So it's specific to whichever users are in these groups, and not the computer configuration, because it really depends on who logs into that machine. Can make changes or whatnot. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to go ahead down here to policies. And let me just show you all the different group policies you could possibly make. There's like thousands and thousands and of group policies you can make. Basically, this is like the nickname that I like to call this is the parental. It's like the parental control for your work environment. That's basically what this is. Uh, so here's some of the things that I'm going to show you what you could probably block. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just show you what you could block, what are blockable. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do first is we're going to go ahead and go down here to what we're going to pick first. I'm going to go ahead and pick add and remove programs, right? This is something where I don't want my users going through and uninstalling stuff on our machines. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead where it says remove, add, and remove programs, and just click here, edit, and then click here, enabled. You can set whatever comments you want or any of the objects or what have you. So I'm just going to enable this one, click apply, and click OK. So now, with this being enabled, that means that anyone who wants to try to do this sort of piece with the remove and remove programs, they can't remove any programs. You see what I'm saying? Um, so that's the other thing that's very, very useful. Um, and this is pretty much enough. So now you can't uninstall anything from add and remove programs. Let's go down here to display. This gives you disable the display control panel. So basically, um, they can't go through there and like try to change the background on the computers. So now what we do is we'll just go down here to edit, right on that, hit enabled, click apply, and click OK. Now they can't change the display settings on your machine. Let's say you have personalization. Now this stuff's about your themes and screensavers and all that good stuff. Let's say you don't want them changing the background. Um, click enabled, click apply, click OK. Now it can't change the background. Let's say you don't want them changing the screensaver. So I just click here on edit, click enable, click apply, click OK. Now they can't change the screensaver. Another one that they have that you may see them try to do is changing the color and appearance. Now, you could be, it depends on how your environment is. It depends on what your environment is, what you want going on in your environment, what you don't want going on in your environment. Um, Me personally, I am more of a stickler. I am what, like, this is like law enforcement, kind of. Because you're enforcing the laws of what the servers, what this virus says, what you can and cannot do in this environment. And most environments you usually have like some policy agreement, and they say, well, you can't do this in this environment. We have this too, just in case. So I said is where you can't change the background. Um, this is talking about prevent changing the theme. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead. Like they can't change the background, they can't change the color, they can't even change the sound, they can't even change the screensaver. I click apply, click OK, and now they can't change the theme or anything like that. Okay? Um, this stuff is talking about enable screensaver. If you disable it, screensaver is not one. You don't really have to worry about disabling it. It depends on what you want to do. This is talks about um, you just go right in here and you can make the change right in this. Now, let's go. This basically, you could block it from changing the screensaver. You can prevent changing the sounds, but I've already done that by changing the theme. So sometimes these may be redundant, is the best way to put it. But I don't really care if you like that kind of thing. That's great. I like using it because I don't like users going through and doing whatever they want. You can, by the way, if you want, yes, you may use it for a home-based environment. You can do that. I have another video for those users who are home-based environments. You don't really need to have Windows Server necessarily. You can just use local security policy, which does very, very similar stuff. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to go down here to programs. And this talks about hide the programs control panel. Now this was where if I enable this policy, they can't go in and they cannot go through to control panel at all. That's what this basically says. So if you don't want your user going to control panel at all, you don't really have to have them do it. You have to allow them. You can just sit here and block it right here in group policy. Um, this talks about programs and features, um, and that talks about. This is very similar to. I'm going to enable this. This is very similar to like add or remove programs. So now they can't uninstall anything if they have an updated machine. If you have an updated workstation or things like that. Um, let's say, all right, so now you can go down here to regional and language settings. This is something I normally don't really check or change really, but if you want to regulate that, you can. I usually don't really do that sort of piece because I don't want to regulate what language a user can use because you may have an employee who may be able to, who may not speak English, who may speak another language. You don't really want to regulate that, but you can hide the geographic location and things like that. I usually don't restrict this, but it's totally up to you what you like to do. But this is something that you can normally do. Okay, so you talked about printers. Um, you can't go through and add extra printers. Once we set them, you cannot change them unless we go onto the machine and change them. This also says we prevent a deletion of a printer. So you cannot delete a printer. So you basically can't. I set this to that with this group policy. They can't change the printers at all. They can't add a printer. They can't delete a printer. Only the techs in that environment can change the printers. Okay, so that is something you could do as well. Okay, um, let's go. I mean, there's plenty of stuff you could edit, you could block. However, I just want to make this disclaimer that group policy is a layer of what I call firewalls. It's like a layer. It is not a replacement for a web-based firewall. So if you want to have something that you want to use to block websites and things like that, you need a firewall that's web-based. Group policy is not web-based. Okay, it's just not a web-based firewall, but it's definitely useful for your environment. It's totally useful for that very purpose. Now, what we'll do is we'll go through and you can do active desktop. This then talks about you can prohibit closing items, deleting items, things like that. You can prohibit changes. This will prevent the user from enabling or disabling the active desktop or changing the configuration. So if you don't want the users changing the settings on that, that's fine. You could just sit there and say prohibit changes. And if you're, by the way, if you're in most environments that you may see, contact your system administrator when you log in. That's because somebody or somewhere in your environment has got some server running where group policy being enforced on that environment. So that's just something to put out there. This is the stuff that we use to like block proxies and things like that through your Internet Explorer. So, so yes. Let's go through, and I'm going to go down to um, network, and this is talks about network connections, and these are some of the stuff like you could prohibit access to your advanced settings. You can prohibit advanced advanced configuration. This is where like a user can sit around and change the IP address of your machine. You cannot change that. So I don't want them changing that, so I'm going to enable that policy, click apply, and click OK. So now they can't go through and change the IP address. A lot of this stuff, like access to properties of a LAN connection, if you don't even want them seeing the IP address, you could have that that disabled too, so they can't really do that when they log on. Like I said, you can pretty much lock it down as much as you want. It's really, really that simple. So this is another little piece I could go through, like start menu, and just do like this. This talks about your desktops in the apps view. All of this stuff is relating to the start menu. Um, Remove all programs. So now a user can't see what programs are installed. So you can go through and just enable that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the games. If you don't want the games, want people playing games on the machine, at least local to the machine, I just click apply, click OK, and guess what? The user can't play games on their machine. And this is just perfect for a workplace environment or a school-based environment, whichever one you want. And by the way, for those Mac users, I have something a little special in a separate video on whether or not group policy works with Macs. Um, so you can do not search internet. You can remove set programs with the settings menu. You could go through and lock all taskbars. You can go through and do not allow pinning items on jump lists. Remove the volume control so they can't really change the volume control. And you could basically set it to where it's muted automatically. They would have to plug in a headset in. So things like that. They're, again, very incredible stuff. You can basically lock down your environment, as like I said, as much as you want. This one talks about prevent users from uninstalling applications from start. So I'm just going to click apply and click OK. That takes care of that. Um, you can just remove the battery meter. I'm not going to remove that. If you want to, that's fine. I wouldn't recommend it if you recommend it though, but it's totally up to you with the removing of a battery meter or things like that. Um, it says removing the networking icon. Um, so removing the battery meter. So you can't really change the battery settings, but that's okay. That's a more of a laptop issue or things like that with respect to laptops. You definitely, as a user, I would want to see, um, let's say a user has an issue where they don't know if you remove the battery meter and that user doesn't know how much battery is left on that laptop and they're after mobile, that could be a big concern. That could be an issue that could be brought up. So that's why it's something I would advise against blocking. But again, that's totally up to you. Um, so now let's go to like Control Alt Delete. Remove change password, remove lock the computer, task manager, things like that. I usually don't disable these, but it's only up to you. If you want, you can block the users from going to Task Manager, or things like you could go to like Control Alt Delete and try to end the task. If you want, you can go through there and block it. Um, this one talks about driver installations. You can even go through like something like power management. For a password. I definitely want to enable this. Um, so takes care of that. This one talks about removable storage access, and this talks about those lovely flash drives and DVD drives and things like that. If you want to just have a cloud-based environment, or let's say you don't really trust users. Yeah, I like how they still have it as a group policy, floppy drives. Even though in 2016 most people are not using floppy diskettes anymore or floppy drives. But definitely these CDs and DVDs. So like if you don't want users coming in with their DVD and watching a movie like Big Mama's House or the Pirates of the Caribbean in your work environment, you can use this. Right click, hit edit, click apply, and click OK. So now I just enabled this policy that basically says you can't go through and watch movies on this environment. This is supposed to be a work or school based or whatever type of environment it's supposed to be. And as a result, um, you cannot go through there and make that change. So that is that's another piece of things you can change. The writing access, that's for like let's say you're burning DVDs or things like that. Um, Most people should not be burning DVDs. No replace environment. So I would just go ahead and apply this and just click OK. That way you can't burn a DVD and it can't even do anything with a CD or a DVD. Okay, it just can't. Uh, Removable disk. It talks about flash drives. You could block users from plugging their flash drive into your machines if you want to. It depends on the environment. It depends on what the management has set for the policy, what they want to have happen, and what they don't want to have happen. It really depends. Honestly, it really, really does. Like I said, and there's a lot of stuff on group policy. I could go. You basically like, let's say, all right, let's talk about another one. Internet Explorer. Now, what's one of the biggest problems that I see a lot in school-based environments? You have kids at the high school level. You don't want the kids. I don't. Let's say I use a good example. Okay, a perfect example. I don't want kids coming in, bypassing my web-based firewall. Let's say I'm using a firewall like Best or WebSense or Checkpoint, and I set it to where I don't want any users going on YouTube, porn, or things like that, pornography, um, playing games on my environment. I don't even want the users going on Facebook and Twitter. Okay? And let's say, so these kids decide, okay, I could go through a proxy. A proxy is essentially an IP address that allows you, is like an alternate IP address that you could switch. And so what happens is it switches out to another environment. So basically what it does, when a proxy does, can be used for this purpose, and that purpose can be to bypass filtering, to bypass whatever firewall I have set in my environment that I have that's blocked. So once, and it's a form of an IP address and a port. So once a user has that information, they can put it right into Internet Options, and once they have that, they can basically go through and do whatever they want. In fact, they could have the IP address so they can bypass your filter, your firewall that you have set as a cybersecurity administrator or system administrator, and they could go through and go to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, games, porn, whatever they want. Okay? I don't want that going on. So with this new policy, talks about everything Internet Explorer related. Um, so this is how you can you could crack down. Um, so let's go through and talk about Internet Explorer now. In this, you have turn off favorites, where if you don't want the users putting favorites on, you don't have to allow them to do that. Now, what you could normally try to do. Now, one thing I wish that group policy had was a thing called a search bar, which I'll try to see if we do. But if not, that's not a big deal. I just wish that they had it as a big deal, but they probably don't, and that's fine. Um, so this one talks about Outlook Express. Outlook Express is the like a Explorer version of Microsoft Outlook, which most people don't use anymore. Now they're on Office. Let's go to browser menus and see what we've got. Now this talks about tip of the day, touring it, turning off the print menu, so you could keep them from You could block them from printing from Internet Explorer if you don't want them printing from there. Um, these are, you're talking about disable the connections page. This group policy is a very, very important one. This is what I was talking about with my example. Like I said, the kids going into your school, you're at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and you have people going through there and playing games instead of working. And let's say you have a firewall set that blocks people from playing games on the network. These people decide they're going to go through and put up IP address or a proxy, and it can use to bypass your firewall. So what I'm going to go ahead and do right now is I'm going to go ahead and block them from doing that. So all you have to do, this one says disable the connection page. So what happens when you have this disabled, that basically what that means, users can't go through and put proxy servers, at least for Internet Explorer. Now, apparently there's for Microsoft Mozilla Firefox, but that's not a group policy. That may be a group policy, but we'll talk about that in a separate video. So this talks about the advanced tab. So like users can go through and make this kind of change, like advanced and stuff like that. So we'll just click enable, click apply, click OK, and now they can't go even go to the advanced piece of it. This general piece is fine. They can change like your home page and web page clearance and things like that. That's fine. What I don't want is I don't like is people going through and putting proxy servers so they can bypass the filtering. Okay, so that's a big problem. Like I said, you could do all this through the beauty of group policy. Let me show you something else. Let's say you got Windows Media Player. Let's say you don't want users watching videos in your environment or things like that. Um, you could go in. These are talking about scans and things like that. This is it's about networking. This is more so now. This one doesn't have. They don't have anything where you can block Windows Media Player from running. Um, which is kind of odd as a policy, but okay. So now we're going to go to another special little feature called Windows Update, and you're probably wondering, um, they can't update the machine. Notifications. And I show you the notifications. So now users can't even go these whatever's in this group policy. They can't go through and try to do Windows Update. Okay, and like I said, and there's a whole lot. There's a lot more. Just in this, there's just a lot more. Um, Always install with elevated privileges, so only the administrators can install anything. Uh, Prohibit removable media resource. any programs from removable media. So they can't just go through in my environment. You don't want them installing programs with your flash drive. So I just go like apply, I click OK, and it takes care of that. This one says hit rollback. And I love how you basically, I like how it tells you right up in this little section. They have a special little section. I just wish they could make it bigger, but apparently not. But it'll tell you what exactly that group policy does, in broader detail, or whatever that thing you want blocked, blocked. So, okay. Let's get into that's power management. So this is where we're going to make our I'll stop for today. I will make a second video on group policy. There's a lot of stuff you can do with respect to group policy, and we'll talk about group policy some more in a next video. I just wanted to say thank you all so much for watching this video. I definitely really appreciate it. It's very group policy is a very useful tool, and it's really quite enjoyable. So thank you all very much, and have a wonderful day.